You are listening to Ace Comicals. My name's Greg. Today I'm joined by my co-host Leon. Let's get started. Hi guys, welcome to Ace Comicals episode number 32. So first of all, I should say a belated happy Easter. We've just had the Easter weekend, so by the time this comes out, Easter's all over and done with, and you're all full of chocolate eggs, and you're all wishing you hadn't eaten all those chocolate eggs. So here we are, and it's just me and Leon today. So, Leon, what have you been up to over this fine Easter period?
I've been chilling out a lot. It's been quite busy in life and work recently, so I used the sort of Easter week, the 4-day weekend, to chill out and to consume some media in the best way possible. I didn't go overboard with the Easter eggs. I got as far as I know so far, because I was away for the weekend. I got one really, really nice hotel chocolate Easter egg and enjoyed that. But yeah, didn't go overboard. Didn't go ham on any hot cross buns or anything like that. So kept it quite chill. But yeah, during the weekend, found some time to catch up on some things. So listeners may remember, I think it was 2 episodes ago, I was away for the cast because I had a work emergency, like a minute before we were about to record. And that sort of was a weird confluence of events where certain things broke down and I had to rush into work to help get that sorted. But what it did do is that it ruined the streak that I was going for. So people on the cast may have picked up, or listeners may have picked up that I'm quite a film nerd. And this year I was trying to watch all 9 of the Best Picture nominees before the Oscars, and the Oscars were the night of that recording. And I'd caught up with every film apart from The Shape of Water, Guillermo del Toro's The Shape of Water, and I was going to see it at the cinema after our podcast recording at 3 p.m. But because I had to go into work, I missed it. And I ended up having to cancel my Oscars party that I was going to have go over to a mate's and hang out. And then, but I still, in defiance, I was like, no, I'm not going to let it completely ruin my evening, and stayed up and watched the Oscars. And then The Shape of Water bloody won. So the one movie I didn't see ended up winning. Anyway, long story short, yeah, caught up with the movie. Really enjoyed it. I have a weird thing with Del Toro where, I really like his earlier stuff. I really like Pan's Labyrinth, but all the stuff around that, I just love his art direction and his just design, the look of his world, the choices that he makes. But for a lot of the time, they don't end up. I don't end up loving them. I just have this weird barrier where I love all the ingredients, but the final meal just comes out and leaves me a bit cold. So with all the buzz that was happening with this movie, I thought, okay, whatever, check it out. I mean, if people are really into this movie, something's got to be going on. Yeah, I really liked it. I'd definitely recommend it. I won't go too deep into that. There's all the jokes going around about grinding Nemo and blah, blah. But yeah, beyond that, it's a really beautiful film, and it's it handles some cool themes and some interesting messages. And it feels really much like unadulterated Del Toro. It doesn't feel like he sort of carved off the edges to make this Oscar bait. I'm actually surprised that, let alone winning, that it was even nominated for big awards. But I do like that it's resonated with so many people with diverse interests. So yeah, I definitely recommend that. You seen it? Seen it, Greg?
Still not seen it yet, and I'm glad you're not going into detail about it because I've still not seen it yet.
No, I'd recommend it. It's got cool monster design, and just the world it weaves is quite interesting, but it doesn't shy away from the truths. Like it's set during the 60s, but it doesn't try to paint this nostalgic picture like just of the 60s without really touching on sort of the negatives of the 1960s in the US at the time. But yeah, it's a cool movie. I really dug it. As well as that, I watched Annihilation, which is the latest film by Alex Garland, who...
Oh, that's that really cool looking Netflix one.
Yeah, it's on Netflix over here. It was in theaters in the US, and it's he's the guy who wrote and directed Ex Machina, which was my favorite film from that year. And this movie is wild. It is wild. Like it's based on a book, but if you've not read the book, I would go into the movie blind and not watch any trailers or anything. Not even the ones that Netflix try to force on you with some stuff. But yeah, I would just dive in because it is a wild movie. Just some of the ideas and the visuals and some of the themes that it approaches and delves into are so resonant, and they work so well. The movie's quite beautiful, and the cast are amazing. Natalie Portman, Jennifer Jason Leigh, Gina Rodriguez, Tessa Thompson, Oscar Isaac, they all knock it out the park like they normally do. So yeah, I would definitely give that a go. Set some time aside, put your phone down, and give Annihilation a watch.
I've already had the Netflix trailer forced on me, so it's too late. I've seen it. Side note, Natalie Portman, the actress that when I see her face, I never remember her name.
Really?
It's like, yeah, I know who she is, but there's like some kind of mental block on her name in my head.
She's been around your whole life, man.
I know. That's the problem. Like, I've seen so many films with Natalie Portman in, but every time I see Natalie Portman in something, I'm like, oh, that's... And like, my mind just goes completely blank. I'm like, I have no memory for putting a name to her face. Maybe it's similar to the spiral tech that Grayson used to use when he was an agent of Spiral in some Batman comics, but I don't know.
I think she lives in your blind spot. Like,
yeah, exactly,
there's a reason that you have face blindness with Natalie Portman. There's some deeper meaning there. And yeah, in addition to catching up on some movies, I will just touch on 2 games that I finally got around to this weekend. The first was the game Inside, which is the 2016 sort of puzzle platformer from Playdead, who are famous for Limbo. And yeah, like it was a lot on a lot of Game of the Year lists. I remember that year, and I remember having to avoid podcasts and stuff because they wanted to get into. I mean, it's not a story-heavy game, but they wanted to get into like, oh, you got to hear about the ending, and I was like, okay, let me dodge all this. But yeah, like finally getting around to it, it's a really good game. The puzzles are really cool and inventive. It definitely builds on what Limbo was, where Limbo was like a monochrome sort of 2.5D like puzzle platformer in the same vein, and this is a bit more 3D and has the color and like has a bit more story as well, and goes to some quite interesting places. I think you would dig it, especially stuff that happens towards the end. I think you would dig it, Greg. And I played that on Steam, but I believe this is on PS4, Xbox One, and I think it's coming to Switch at some point. But yeah, I definitely recommend that game. I mean, there's not much more to add to this. I mean, everyone has said their piece about how good it is, and they're correct. It's really, really good. And then finally, I caught up in a game called the Sexy Brutale. That is a game by Cavalier Game Studios and Tequila Works, and this is an adventure puzzle game, but the twist on this is that you're in a mansion where everyone wears a mask for some reason, and these masks have different abilities, but people are being bumped off in between 12 midday and 12 midnight that evening. So your job is to solve the mysteries and find how to save each of these people to sort of break this weird curse of this mansion. And it's really, really cool. The thing that sort of drew me towards it is I think I saw it on display at EGX Rezzed the year it came out, or the year before it came out, so that would have been 2016. But I never got around to chance playing, but the name stuck in my head. So when I saw it on Steam, I bought it fairly near release, but it came out in April last year, but I only just got around to playing it now. But yeah, it's really cool because what it reminds me of a lot is Majora's Mask, Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask, where people remember the loop in that game is that you have 3 days before the moon crashes into the planet. So you've got to collect masks in a similar way by doing a variety of sort of side missions for a bunch of different characters. And then on the 3rd day, you can go up to the moon and fight Skull Kid. And then you can sort of go back in time by playing like the Song of Time, or you can speed up time by playing the Song of Time, sort of double speed or whatever. But like it's a very similar mechanic to that, but over a much more condensed period and condensed space. And yeah, it's right up my alley. It's an idea that I've always found quite intriguing, and why Majora's Mask is one of my favorite Zelda games. And I think this does a really cool thing with that mechanic, and it has a really cool, delightful like art style, and the way how the schedule works. Like, it's really cool because you'll be in one part of the mansion and you'll hear these different events happening. So at like, say 2 p.m, you'll hear glass crashing. You'll be like, I wonder what that is. And you won't find out until like you've tried to save a bunch of people to get to that point. So you might, in human hours, you might not figure that out for like another 3 hours or something like that. Like, what the hell was that crashing at 2 o'clock? And then you'll hear like a gunshot at 4, and you'll feel like, oh, I wonder what caused that gunshot. And the characters are all, during those 12 hours, they're all on a set routine. So it's really cool. I would heavily recommend it to everyone. It's a really cool puzzle game.
Yeah, it does sound very cool. It sounds like something that ages ago might have had a DS release or a 3DS release. Yeah,
I think now it's on the main consoles, Steam, and I think it hit the Switch in November. So yeah, it does feel like something from that era.
Yeah,
and it does have a cool sort of look like that, where the characters are, for lack of a better term, sort of chibi style, like big heads and on bodies. But it's a really delightful style, and there's a lot of cool direction to that game, and the way it's designed is really smart. And puzzles you solve later on, you're thinking, oh, and that's how that tied into blah blah and blah. So it is really cool in that way, and you do feel smart when you, like inside, you feel smart when you solve a puzzle or make sense of a riddle.
That sounds cool.
What about you?
It's been sort of games, but like not video games, just games of a different way. Because I've kind of got really big into Magic the Gathering again. I started playing it again about 1.5 years ago because a couple of mates of mine were playing it again, and I've sort of slowly got back into it, and I've got all my old cards back out, and I've started buying new cards, and I've been deck building, and I've been playing against myself with my own decks and things like that, and I'm all hyped for the new card set that gets released sort of later on this month. I think it's sort of around the second to last weekend in April, which is when they're going to do the pre-release stuff. So I think that's on Saturday the 21st. There's some pre-release events happening in places, and there's a whole new card set coming with some new cards and some new rules that all look very cool. And I've just gotten like really hooked on the mechanics of the game again, and like all the different combinations of rules and cards that you can put together, and the way you can make that work, like the strategizing and the meta game, and then thinking I've done really well at building a deck, and then going and playing against somebody and having that all undone in front of me in a matter of seconds.
Sounds super savage.
It is, but it's fun. I've only been to like one Friday Night Magic event, and I only stayed there for like an hour or so, and played a couple of casual games. But it was cool, and I'm thinking of getting into going to the Friday night stuff, so to like start going to tournaments and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, what's the scene like where you live?
So there's a place called Tabletop Tyrant in Leicester, which is the sort of the game shop in Leicester. There's no other kind of like board game slash tabletop game shop anymore. So everybody goes there, everybody congregates there, and they don't just play Magic there, they play other trading card games as well. People go there for table space to play Dungeons and Dragons. People go there to play things like Warhammer and other tabletop games, war games and stuff like that. And it's just a really cool little shop. And for the brief time I was there, it was quite nice. The guy I was playing games with he's a cool guy. He was, you know, he was helpful. He was like teaching me stuff as we went along, because obviously I'm a bit rusty, and B, thousands of new keywords and rules since I last played properly. So, you know, I learned. He's like teaching me stuff and reminding me of stuff as we're going along and things like that. And he wasn't like too savage in beating me. It's kind of like, I liken it to when I've spent time in the fighting game scene, where everyone's eager to teach, and like you go there to learn, and you go there to have fun, and nobody's that toxic about it or anything, you know? I mean, yeah, there's the sort of like the in jokes and everything else that people have when they're part of these scenes, and there's like like the kind of certain culture around certain cards or whatever, you know, that people have certain jokes about certain rules or things like that, or people will refer to certain character moves in certain ways when you play fighting games.
Yeah, like there's just general salt and like factionalism. Yeah,
but not quite that. I mean, it seems a little bit more laid back than that, I think.
Yeah. A lot more sort of jokey, a lot more sort of joking, punch in the arm, ribbing type thing.
Well, no, less of the trash talk. I mean, you do get the trash talk, but it's not trash talk in the same way that you'll get with fighting games. I don't think it's as I don't want to say it's not as energetic or whatever. This is only like the brief time I spent at this place for like this one night, but it's like it's still quite energetic and whatever as a scene, but it's not as boisterous, I guess, as the fighting game scene. I think boisterous is the word I was looking for. But yeah, no, it was really cool, and I'm going back at you know, like when I can make it on a Friday and playing some games of Magic, because I like playing Magic. I've been playing other board games as well. Sophie wanted to play some board games with me, and we got out a game that I own called Epic Spell Wars of the Battle Wizards, Duel at M.t Skullzfyre. Now, the thing that made me initially buy this game was that it reminded me heavily of curse words, because there's this whole bit in curse words where they have this kind of competition where they pit the wizards against each other in the whole world in duels, like various like individual duels, and they fight for Syzygy's amusement basically, and to prove themselves worthy of fighting Wizard in our world. And it just made me think of that when I looked at the rules and looked at the way the game works and everything else, and I just thought, I'm having that. So I bought this game. I actually bought it when I was with you guys last in London, and it was the way the game works is you build a spell, and it's made up of different cards that have different rules and different types of magic, and you build a spell in 3 parts, and then you shout that spell out and you follow what it says on the spell. So one card will say deal 2 damage, one card will say heal yourself for 2 damage, and things like that. And you just go through like that until someone dies, and then when you're the last wizard standing in a game, if you like, you collect a last wizard standing token. The first person to 2 last wizard standing tokens is the winner. It's hard to explain without the game out in front of me and without sort of like physically showing you how to play, but it's really cool and really fun, and it's way more simple than it sounds. So
was it relatively pain-free in getting Sophie up and running?
Yeah, it's easy to pick up the rules. it didn't take long before Sophie started to understand it, like playing it with her and things like that. As someone who's, if you someone coming in fresh and never played it before, like we taught another friend of mine to play it as well. So me and Sophie then took the game down to the local pub, place called the West End Brewery, near to where I live. We took it down there, and we taught my friend Jake to play as well. And again, it was very easy for us to teach him how to play. And having only played it once, Sophie could teach him the rules.
Yeah.
So it was pretty simple and pretty easy to pick up, kind of thing. Yeah, definitely recommend it. It's a really fun party game. It does go well with alcohol, because obviously the more you drink, the more likely you are to use a stupid wizard voice and shout out these stupid sounding spells.
And that's what you generally want with these games.
Exactly, yeah. It's great fun. And I think there's expansions and stuff for it as well, which is really cool. So I really got into that. Other than that, like media-wise, I've caught up on Riverdale, so I'm like well up to date with Riverdale now.
So am I. We're both up to date at the same time.
Yes, we are.
I think maybe at the end of this season, we need to have like a bit of a spoilery section and just discuss it in detail.
Yeah, we should do when this one's finished. I think we should probably maybe even do like a short half an hour cast with us guys just chatting about Riverdale.
Yeah, I'd be totally up for that.
Yeah, no, I really am into Riverdale. I think I'm enjoying how silly it is sometimes.
Yeah, it does luxuriate in the absurd quite a lot, and just like leans into it in ways that I quite enjoy.
I think that's what I like about it. I like how absurd it is at times, and I think it's in other places I think it's a really great show, and I would recommend it to anyone. So yeah, no, Riverdale definitely. Onwards from there, I guess we better start talking about comics, being as that's what this podcast is supposed to be for. So this week I've got a couple to get through. It's mainly stuff that I've been keeping up with and catching up on, and a couple of things that have ended and things that have just sort of like struck my curiosity and whatever else. So I've got, before like I go into kind of like the heavy as it were for comics that I'm going to properly review, I just wanted to mention that Doomsday Clock number 4 is now on the shelves. The standard cover, which I have, is a delicious pile of pancakes covered in maple syrup. A lot of people don't like it, looking at some of the early reviews I've seen on the internet, and I'm not sure if that's because people genuinely don't like it, or if that's a symptom of what we've discussed on this podcast before, where people are very precious about the Watchmen and about where the Watchmen came from, and about the original Alan Moore stuff. And I think people are still viewing it through the lens of it's not as good as the original, when I can see it as something different. I mean, yes, it is a direct sequel, but I'm enjoying it for other reasons. I think it's I like what they've done with it. I like that they've updated it, and people think that they're dumbing down the material and things like that in this run, but I myself don't see that at all. And yeah, I thought it was very enjoyable when I did read it. It kind of goes into a bit of detail about the past of the new Rorschach, gives us a bit of exposition and explanation about his origin and everything else. And I actually thought that this one was very Watchmen in the way that it pans out and the way that it's written. So yeah, Doomsday Clock number 4, and the saddest thing about that is we're not going to see another one for a while now, because it's gone bi-monthly, hasn't it?
Why do you think that is? Schedule.
It's scheduling stuff, I reckon, yeah. I haven't looked too much into that, but I could probably get you an answer. Probably by
that will
podcast.
give me time to catch up on it, and then
we can discuss it properly.
Be able to see which team I'm on, because I can foresee a space where it doesn't quite work for people, and it's not directly limited to it not living up to the seminal series before. So I'm wondering where I will end up landing. Like, I've read the first issue, and like I said on the cast, I'm willing to see where this goes and see if something interesting and smart is done with it. So I am going to use this scheduling opportunity to try and catch up, and then we can have a conversation about it and see where I land on the spectrum. And
definitely, and by then I will hopefully I'll do a bit of digging and try and find out why it's gone bi-monthly. I think it's going to be scheduling issues with certain writers and artists, so that have probably got other projects in the bank as well. So, but I've actually just noticed from staring at the cover in front of me as I'm chatting to you that the shapes that the maple syrup makes on the pancakes is a Rorschach blot test.
Of course.
And it's a really pretty cover, and if I wasn't so precious about the comic, maybe I would, what do I mean if I wasn't so precious about the comic? I could still frame it. Yeah, I'd frame that cover. I like it. I like pancakes. I like Rorschach. It's a very nice, deliciously drawn pile of pancakes. So
yeah, get that in a nice frame.
Good with that. Yeah. So moving on to other books that seem to be other books that I seem to be on the wrong side of the tracks with, because I've noticed this a lot actually, that a lot of times I will read something and really enjoy it, and then I will look at other reviews to try and sort of gauge what the popular consensus is sometimes before I talk about it. And a lot of people dislike the stuff I like, and I tend to be in the minority with liking something, but it's not like I'm doing it to be a contrarian or anything like that. I genuinely like these things. And this one is it's number one of a new Usagi Yojimbo miniseries. It's number 1 of 7, and this is Usagi Yojimbo: The Hidden, number 1. Now, I've seen a Bleeding Cool review for this, and they said that it suffered from problems with tone relating to the way that Stan Sakai depicts death in the book. They're saying that they got a bit of tonal whiplash with it because it's quite a nice historical story that's kind of like it's got a bit of historical accuracy around it and things like that in the way the story's written, and there's a bit of historical context and everything else, and it's quite nice that way. But then because it's cartoonish in its depiction of death and some of the way that the violence can be slightly slapstick at times, it feels like you're getting tonal whiplash from it. But I don't see it that way. I actually really enjoyed it, and I think that this review maybe has looked for issues or has found issues where I don't think there are issues where this review has found issues. Because this is just me. Maybe it's because I watch a lot of Saturday morning-ish cartoon stuff, like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, or like other older Sat AM stuff where they will deal with something quite lofty, but it's still a cartoon. So in a way, it's still put in a way children can understand it and enjoy it. If that makes sense. So maybe I'm just used to that and other people aren't.
Or if more of it's a case where you're more open to it.
Yeah, maybe. But yeah, I mean, it's typical of Stan Sakai's work in that he's a cartoonist. It's what he does. So when I read something like this, I go into it expecting abstraction and expecting him to do things like that. And I really enjoyed it. I really enjoy Usagi books. So, I mean, maybe I'm not totally unbiased when I'm saying that, but yeah. I mean, the other issue that they picked with it was that it maybe it could do with some more shading, but I think that's an unfair observation because Stan Sakai has worked with lines since the beginning. Like, I don't think you can pick fault with artwork that when an artist has done the same thing for years and years and years, and no one has ever found issue with the way that artist has done things, and it's not a, how do I put this into words?
Do you think it's a case of
it's
like
his style, and it's his style,
newer or younger reviewers having a sort of first-time interaction with his work, and
it could
this
be
is like a new hot take, or do you think it's a thing where people are suddenly realizing or verbalizing things that they've always felt was true about it?
It could be part of the latter and maybe even a little bit of the former there. I don't know. But for me, I think that obviously I like Stan Sakai's style. I like his very simple, clean lines and his simple, cartoony characters, and the way that he does things, and the way that he shows things, and the way that he's telling this story and putting it in a way that I think that's what cartoons do. They boil things down. Or they are very, very good for boiling things down into easily understandable, easily digestible. What can I call it?
Well, I guess more like packaging them to be more readily consumed.
Yeah, I think that's what I was going for. I'm losing my words now, but yeah, that's what Stan Sakai does, and that's what he's been very good at, I think, in other stories. And I think that's what a lot of other cartoonists do. I mean, I see in this book, in the way that it's taking something so, the introduction of Christianity, or the early introduction of Christianity to Japan, and explaining that, and explaining the way that worked with the way that worked with Japanese culture and everything else, and the way that the way that people took to it and things like that. I think it's taken that and explained it in like I said, repackaged it in a way that's easy to understand, and boiled it down to something simple that people can read and digest. And I look at this, and I look at some of the recent work that Sergio Aragonés has done in other books that I've talked about on this cast. The Gru, Play of the Gods books. And I see a similarity in tone in the way that the Gru stuff worked as well, because in the Gru books, they were dealing with the conquistadors going over to South America and imposing Christianity on the Native Americans and the people that lived in South America, the Aztecs and the Incas and whoever else were around at the time when the conquistadors landed. For me, that's where the similarity is. And I think that's what cartoons are good at, and I like it when cartoons do that, and I think cartoons should continue to do that, because, and with the way this is done as well, with the way that the death is portrayed and everything like that, it's kid-friendly, so you can give this to a kid, and it almost a teaching aid, because you can show them something like this, and then you can go into the nitty-gritty afterwards, and they've had a nice sort of easy introduction into it, if you understand. And then when they ask questions, or if they want to read further, they have the option to do that. And they've had a nice little sort of introduction into it that's interesting to them, and that's why I like books like this. So yeah, I don't think there are problems where they have said there are problems. So yeah, it's got great art, great line work, lovely panel layouts, and charming character design as usual, which is typical of Stan Sakai, because he draws these anthropomorphic samurai animals and things, and they're just really cool to look at, and I love his work. And I don't think the lack of shading is ever being an issue. It's his style, and he's a cartoonist. So this is what I expect. And I don't think it does have tonal issues. And I certainly don't get tonal whiplash reading it. I think it's still a great adventure book, and I love it. Onwards from there, I think, Leon, you had something to talk about.
Yeah, I decided I wanted to check out some new number ones. Silly, because I've got so many. 3s, 4s, 5s, and 6s to catch up on, but I went to check out some number ones and see what was out at the moment. So I avoided some of the big publishers, and I found 2 comics I really like. The first one was Breathless number 1, and this is from publisher Black Mask, written by Pat Shand, art done by Renzo Rodriguez, colors done by Mara Jane Carpenter, and they have a production artist in Phil Smith. And pretty much, I mean, the book is pitched as Buffy if the big bad was the pharmaceutical industry. And yeah, I mean, you get a lot of, you get that to a degree. That's very much an elevator pitch style of it, because it's not as reductive as that. But yeah, basically that is sort of the core of it. It's about lead character Scout Turner, who's pretty much a cryptozoologist with asthma, who dissects monsters for some shady pharma company. And an accident happens in the lab, which leads to her asthma being potentially cured, which leads to her annoying assistant, who's like has 4 names, but her like main hyphen name is Grace Isley, and she's an incessant chatterbox. But yeah, it leads to her tweeting about the incident and it being a possible cure, and that leads to consequences which play out later on in the comic. And yeah, like I sort of didn't know what to expect going in this, but I thought the character design of Scout Turner was really cool. She's African American woman with like shaved hair, shaved side of the head, and like hair on top, sort of combed over in a pretty cool way. And she seems quite. She's not a 2D no nonsense badass type thing. The comic starts with her going to a pharmacist and picking up her prescription for like asthma meds, and the pharmacist is like, "Oh, are you sure? Do you know how much this costs?" And she's like, "Yeah, of course I'm sure. Why do they always ask me this?" And obviously, it's quite expensive, and so there's definitely a commentary here on like sort of healthcare and the pharmaceutical industry, and how it's pushed for profit over for healthcare. But it doesn't really come off as really preachy. It just ends up being like an element of this character's lives so far. But yeah, she's quite rounded in a way, because she isn't just stoic. She has other stuff going on. She takes care of her aunt, who it seems is someone who raised her. So unsure what happened with her parents so far. And yeah, she's quite unfazed by working on like these crazy like beasts that they have an acquisition team who are like these soldier types who go out and like kill these monsters and bring them in, and so that her and her assistant can slice them up and see what's going on under the hood. But yeah, it paints like we don't know so much about the world so far, because of what it seems like is people outside don't really know about all these monsters, and this company, whoever they are, they're doing all this stuff like covert. It does give me a very sort of Buffy season 4 vibe, where there's this I can't remember the initiative, I think they're called, and they're this like government agency in Sunnydale, who basically go out hunting like the monsters and vampires in Sunnydale, in the cloak of the dark. But yeah, it's quite cool. I'm quite liking this first issue. The art has a nice, cool look to it. I really like how the characters are designed, and yeah, like there's lots of sort of setup where these characters could be sort of one note. So as I was saying with Scout, she could just come off as one note, but she actually like cares about her annoying assistant and is a bit more rounded. And like her annoying assistant, Grace Isley, she's like annoying chatterbox, but she's good at her job apart from when she's tweeting. She's good at her job, and she's indispensable to Scout. So I do love that they've mixed it up a bit, and like they've done cool things in terms of just how sort of normal a lot of the things which are non-standard are presented. So like Grace Isley, for instance, is she comes in late to that vivisection, and she's like talking about how she was hanging out with the acquisitions team, and there was this really hot lead commander. I think her name was Claire, and she was like, she just kept going on about it. It's like, oh, it's Claire. She was amazing. And then so like Scout, while doing her like normal business, sees her in the hallway and asks outright that Claire if she can get her number for her assistant. So there's a cool sort of friendship, interpersonal thing going on here, as well as all this like crazy supernatural stuff. So I'm quite liking what it's doing, and I'm looking forward to checking more of it out. And yeah, like number one of a bullet, I noticed like on the initial pages, everyone just puts on their Twitter handle, and Twitter's in this, and it definitely feels like it's engaging with sort of our connections and reliance with these services, which can cause like big damage, because Grace Icy says she only has 22 followers and nobody liked it, but once a tweet is out in the wild, or Facebook sees that out in the wild, it's out there and can be grabbed even if it has been deleted. So it is interesting how they're tying in a lot of these things together. But yeah, Greg, I definitely would recommend you give issue 1 a read.
I'll have to give that a look. That does sound pretty cool. Yeah,
it's doing some like some cool things, and I'm interested in seeing where it goes, because the setup isn't dystopian. It's like just life is going on as normal for everyone else, and it's these people behind the veil who investigating things under the cloak of darkness. So yeah, I'll check it out. And you've got like a lot of sort of, even though the lead character is a cryptozoologist, you have sort of a detective angle where there's like she has like a monster, not a monster. Yeah, I guess it's a monster. I think it's the lady is a succubus, and she like pumps her for information and brings her like cow meat and stuff, and tells her to stop feasting on runaway pets and stuff. So yeah, there's definitely a cool vibe there. But yeah, I would check it out. Can't really go into too much more without going into the plot, which is barely started, to be honest. But yeah, it's a good book. It's a good book, and I really liked issue 1.
Yeah, I will definitely have to give that a look. It's got a bit of that social media stuff in that sets me on edge as well, so definitely worth me going to look. Speaking of things that set you on edge, my next one is Harrow County. Now, the reason I'm talking about this again now is because it's coming to a close. It's going to end soon. And it's so good. And it's one of those things where it's like this comic series where, you know, when you start reading them and you carry on reading them and you follow them and you follow them and you follow them, and you get a little bit sad when you learn they're going to end. And I'm only like halfway through this. I'm behind. I've been reading trades, desperately trying to catch up, because I was late to the game. I didn't start reading Harrow County until last year when we did our Halloween cast, when I did the first trade for review. And it's just so good, and I'm a little bit sad knowing that it's going to end, knowing that it's going to be finite, you know,
like saying goodbye to a friend.
Yeah, it kind of hits you that comic runs and comic stories, you know, they are finite sometimes, and as much as you don't want them to end. I mean, I've talked in previous casts about sometimes it's good when things end, but it doesn't mean you always want it, you know. I've just finished the third trade, which is called Snake Doctor, and I am halfway through the 4th trade, which I believe is called Family Tree. Yes. So it's like, building on what I said, or just repeating almost what I said last year. It's a great story with great, fantastic horror elements. So I love the way that the horror is worked into this, and I have a feeling that a lot of it is a lot of the horror they use in this is to do with folk tales and sort of like legends and campfire stories that you would hear in the South in the US. And because I've also been playing Where the Water Tastes Like Wine, which I talked about on a previous cast. I've been trying to sort of marry the two, like looking for horror stories in that match things I've read in Harrow County, kind of thing. I've not really come across anything yet, but like the way the way they use Southern dialect in these books and the way that's written, I think is great, and I think Cullen Bunn's done a really great job of that. I also really enjoy the way that the way they use like some of this, like some that, like they call it like haints, ghosts as haints and things like that, and it's just great. It's I love the art and the especially like when I've been reading through it and I've been reading these trades, as you get these like title splashes, where it's like a double page spread, and it's just like a landscape, a scene, maybe a train coming across some tracks, and you can see open fields, and it's like some gorgeous like sunset going on in the sky, and you have the words Harrow County written in the stars, and they managed to work the title into the splash so naturally. I mean, there's one where the title is in the way that the puddles form in the ground because it's raining outside, and you've got puddles forming in a mud track, and there's one where it says Harrow County in a bunch of knotted corn, like woven into the corn in a cornfield. And I just think it's really cool how they do that. As I say, I've continued reading it in a bid to catch up, and it remains in equal parts disturbing and endearing, which is something else I really like about this book. And yeah, any fan of horror or whatever, I recommend and tell you to pick it up and get on it before it's too late, because it's coming to an end, and I don't want to spoil it, but it's a really, really great story. Really great story. And when I finally finished it and I've got all the trades, it's going on my shelf next to Lock and Key as one of those stories that I can come back to anytime, because I do love it that much. And that is by Cullen Bunn, Tyler Crook.
Yeah, I remember I believe I read the first issue back at Halloween, and now it's done. I think I'll go back and read it up. See if I get pulled into the world as effectively as you have. Carry
on with it, because it's some really great gothic horror, some really good Southern gothic horror in this book. And as I say, it's done in such a way that, as horrifying as it is, it's also a very endearing story. So in places it's almost sweet when you're reading it, and I think to have those two flavors in one dish, I think is a great thing, a really great thing. And another thing that has recently come to an end. Everything's ending. Why?
That's what spring's about, isn't it? Like new death, right?
Yeah. It's like a lot of things on my pull list are coming to an end. And Dark Knight's Metal has recently finally come to an end. We've had 6 issues of Dark Knight's Metal, and that's not counting all the various tie-ins and everything else. And when they do a trade, I'm assuming there will be an edition that pulls the whole lot together. So if you want all the one-shots, if you want all of the Justice League tie-ins and things like that, it's all going to be there. So those of you remember when I've talked about Dark Knight's Metal before, it's the story of the Dark Multiverse encroaching on the standard DC multiverse, and the attempts of the sort of the dark malevolent force Barbatos to pull the multiverse into the depths, into the darkness, and destroy it. And you've got obviously these nightmarish reflections of Batman from various ends of the dark multiverse have come together to aid Barbatos in this plot. And they were all promised their own worlds. They were promised sort of new life, out of their nightmare worlds, because where they are at the moment, it's like a torturous reflection of what happens in the real multiverse. And it's all come to a head in this one big final blowout. And it's just been a really, really cool event. The list of names for this event is huge. Like, so many people have worked on it. And with you're quite right, actually, because with endings comes new beginnings. So with the ending of Dark Knight's Metal, what we have is the beginning of a new sort of era for DC Comics. We've got it sort of ushers in the new age of heroes, which is like there's a list of new heroes that have come off the back of this event and out of things that have happened because of things that have happened in this event, things that have been set in motion. We have new heroes from new parts that of the multiverse or whatever that have been revealed as part of this event and things like that, which is kind of cool. And what we've also got at the end of this book is the extension of the universe into, or the DC multiverse, as it were, into other space beyond the DC multiverse. We have these kind of like Marvel's Celestials, really, but like the DC versions. Sort of they're sort of coming up, and they're kind of on the periphery. So I mean, with the end of DC Metal comes new life, but also new threats. And it's going to be from there onwards, it opens up the way for the next big DC event in a very DC way. And it looks like we're going to get, I think the next event is going to be Justice League No Justice. I think that's the next thing to come, and that's what it sort of opens the way for. There's callbacks to previous events in here, like it plays a lot off, the Multiversity book.
Yeah.
Having read Multiversity, there's a lot in Multiversity that then comes back up in this. There's also callbacks in book 6 to the beginning of the event, which I really enjoyed, in the way they brought that back up. And it's just a very, very comic book. Like, I know you guys talk about comiciness in things and this whole kind of like complicated multiverse stuff and different versions of different characters doing different things, and
the weeds.
Yeah. It's that on that level, and that's why sometimes when I'm thinking about how to explain it, I'm thinking Ray and Leon must be tearing their hair out listening to me talk about this. But it is that kind of comic, very traditional, very very superhero comic, very very DC, very comic book, and I love it for that. And I think what comes after it is going to be great as well.
Yeah, I think that stuff can be quite rewarding if you've been someone who's relatively kept up with stuff like that. So it's like, a bad analogy is it like a revival show that comes back. So say stuff like the Gilmore Girls, or like even Dragon Ball Super. And it's super rewarding to people who watch all those episodes as they came out, or even caught up on them in years between. But when you're someone who has not been and has only dabbled in things to do with those things here and there, like a one shot or a trade or something like that, it's mind-boggling. And it always baffles me how fresh newbies will walk into a comic shop and just start a number one on this thing, knowing that it has all this history. They're so brave, like so much more braver than me. I can't do that. I need to find out what led into this thing, and that leads me back to what led into this thing and this thing and this thing, and then by that time I've already started looking at an image book.
Well, that's how I that's how I kind of got into it, because obviously I'm 30, and when I was reading comics as a kid, everything already had bags and bags and bags of baggage in history.
Hmm.
By the time I had picked up my first comic, things that had happened, you'd already had Crisis on Infinite Earths, you'd already had the Infinity stuff in the Marvel universe. But it's like lore, like when you play a video game and you play a video game that just shows you kind of one facet, if you like, of a wider tale, and then you will go and find all the surrounding lore for it. Video games that are like this, I'm guessing, I'm talking, more about like MMOs and things like that. If you've ever played an MMO, I mean, I don't get on with MMOs myself, but I hear it's like that. A lot of people that I know that are into MMOs, they will start playing an MMO and then they will go back and find all the lore surrounding said story in the MMO to know why things are how they are in the game. And that's kind of what I like in it too. So walking in and buying a number one or buying a random comic to get started, it gives you a springboard into a wider world, because then you want to understand what you've just read, and then you'll go back and read stuff, which is kind of what I did. Like I would then go looking for stuff on the internet, or I would I would ask other people that I knew that liked comics. I would ask them, why is this like this, and I would get explanations, and things like that. So it's kind of that kind of thing, and I'm like, I mean, I will admit this DC multiverse stuff it's very comic book, and even I have a hard time explaining it to you guys on the cast because I'm not very. Sometimes I will admit that I'm not great at explaining things because I'm not great at words. But yeah, I would recommend reading the DC Metal event. Maybe read Multiversity and then read DC Metal.
Yeah, that's probably a shout.
Might have more of a grounding for some of the things they reference in it anyway, and the way it works. But yeah, it's a great event, and like in a sea of names, the main names that kind of like the big names that worked on these books, you will have Scott Snyder, Greg Capullo, FCO Placentia, and Jonathan Glapion. They are your like main names for the event, but obviously it's such a huge list. We're talking like the list of names that worked on this event. It's a monolith. So, but yeah, it's great, and it's when it's collected, pick it up, because I'm sure there'll be a very nice hardback edition that includes everything. So yeah, it's one worth going back to and one worth reading. That's DC Metal. One of the better big comic events, I think, actually, of the previous years. So Leon, back to you.
Yeah, as I was saying earlier, I went slightly off the beaten track, away from some of these bigger publishers that we're often speaking about, to try and seek out some new comics. And I came across Infinity 8, which is published by The Lion Forge, and was written by Louis Trondheim and the writer Zepp. And the art was done by Dominique Bertel, which I know that I'm butchering all these names. And the design direction was by Olivier Vatine. It was originally published in France back in 2016 as I'm going to kill this Romance Maccabees. So take that for what you understood it to be. But yeah, the story is basically about an agent named Yoko Karen, who works aboard the Infinity 8, which is this massive interstellar vessel that's carrying 880,000 passengers. in a sort of, say, Star Trek-y on a larger scale, or like Battlestar Galactica, but without the chase. Or more so like in a sort of Megazone 2-3, if you're aware of that anime. But yeah, they're aboard this massive starship, and they come across a previously unforeseen spatial obstacle that blocks their route. So the captain tasks her with the mission to investigate what this star system sized obstacle is, which is kind of harsh for one agent, but so she goes to investigate that. And it's pretty cool. I quite like this book. It was quite a good find. So yeah, it does a couple of things quite well. The design of all the different alien species, because there's so many different ones on board. It isn't just sort of Star Trek-y where they sort of cop out and most of them are humanoid shaped. You get a lot of different sized, differently designed alien species aboard this ship. And Yoko, she's sort of painted as like this badass sort of agent who in the opening like beats the crap out of these like other species. One's like a kind of bull designed alien, and she like handles them super easily. And yeah, she's just an all-round badass. Her outfit, and I think this is the outfit of all the agents aboard the ship. It's like this cool sort of like Thunderbirdsy like little sailor caps, and like all blue, but in typical sort of. I mean, this is a French book, and it has a lot of influence from French sci-fi comics and French sci-fi media, and it has very much like it shares the same influences and is possibly influenced by things like Luc Besson's Fifth Element and his recent Valerian and a Thousand Planets movie, which was based on the Valerian comic. And yeah, it has this very 60s French sci-fi feel. So like typically all the women are super sexy and the clothes are like skin tight, and yeah, on the female costumes they're all bearing midriff for some reason, but that's just how it is on this sexy ship. And yeah, the comic starts out with her. She's got leave coming up soon, so she's talking about how she'd be interested in starting a family, but she basically hacked into, well, not really hacked in, but she's sort of abusing her power as an agent to have access to the ship's logs. So she's just constantly, sitting in a bar talking to the barman, who's like sort of an alien, not really a slug, but he's like a massive non-humanoid creature. And she's just like aiming this zapper at people, clicking it, and their stats are coming up showing like what disease is and what their medical history is like. And she's just like, there's 88,000 of us on there. Only like, I think 8,000 are human, and only half of those are male. And so she's like pretty stuck for chances, but it's a funny trip that they keep playing on, because she just zaps every male, no matter the species, and comes up with different things like, oh, alcoholic, oh, has clinical depression, oh, has this issue, blah blah blah, and she's just going through doing that while engaging in her sort of daily activities. But yeah, she gets called up by the captain, who is really cool designed. So the captain sort of lives in this outside of this bubble chamber and is connected to, by tentacles, is connected to like the higher ups on the bridge, and sort of speaks via like psychic communication. And yeah, she basically flies off towards the rubble or the debris, and starts to find some weird stuff there. And a lot of death and a lot of just weird things out there. And at the same time, one of the races are aboard the ship. They all start to go like crazy once once the whole ship's come into contact with this debris, and they've gone nuts. So they all like run towards the airlocks and to try and get close to all this stuff for reasons I explained in the comic. But one of the cool things on the cool concepts in this book is when Yoko Karen gets called over, she's called into Protocol 8, which the lieutenant, deputy captain, he explains, like, so the Ton Shah, which is the name of the captain's race, they can open up parallel timelines for 8-hour stretches, where they can either rewind back after that time or continue down the new permanent timeline. And they can do this up to 8 times in a row. So this is ways they can do investigation without like literally wasting time, as it's put in the comic. So I'm assuming that plays a big part into this story as well. But yeah, so far we're not that deep, but it's quite a cool book. It does has a few of the sort of tropes that you'd expect of the sort of French sci-fi things where you have a sexy lead character, and so I mean she's quite male gazed in the book, but so far it hasn't really hit a point where it seems particularly in bad taste. But and I guess readers were, but your mileage will vary because she has quite a lot of authority and dominance, and she's not really like, she holds a lot of the power in pretty much all of these conversations he's had, despite the fact that I think I count like 3 maybe, or maybe 4 dudes tried to hit on her during the course of these 30 pages. But yeah, no, I think it's quite cool so far, and it's another one that I'm annoyed that I've sort of picked up now, because there's only one issue. Well, I could learn French, I guess, but yeah, there's only one issue translated so far, I believe. But yeah, I really like this book, and it's got a cool art style. The concepts seem quite fleshed out. The character designs are very imaginative and not sort of the standard that you see. And yeah, I'm interested to see where it goes next. And I would recommend everyone check out issue 1 at least, because I think if like I have like an intellectual knowledge, but not so much an actual experience in reading a lot of these sort of French books. So I know there's a few that I've read, and there's a few that I've interacted with. But I've not like read like Valerian or anything like that. But it's definitely sort of made me think about sort of checking out some of these books from the past, especially as we're getting more and more books, sort of films and TV based on these things. And this book is kind of a nice gateway drug to that. But yeah, I'm quite liking what I see here, and it's not to be confused with the Infinite Loop, which I've spoken about here previously, which is also a sci-fi book to do with time travel, involving an author and an illustrator with French names, with the word infinite in it.
Isn't that one a French book as well?
Yeah, but yeah, there's something magical about the French and infinity. That's what it is. They're ahead of us. They've travelled into the future 8 times, and they've got a better idea on it than we have, and that's why all of our stuff is boring brown dystopias, and all their stuff is colourful, sexy time travel. So maybe there's a few things we could learn from them. But yeah, that's Infinity 8. Check it out.
Boring brown dystopias indeed. Yeah, I'll have to give that a look because that sounds pretty cool, definitely. And I always mean to read more French books because the French have a sort of a great library of comics that are by French artists and French authors and things that sometimes get overlooked or missed because they don't see a wider release, but they do get translated occasionally, and they are really good when you do pick them up. And it is something that I wish I read more French comic books, and maybe we should do an episode about French comics specifically.
Because I've read like a handful of French and European books that we've mentioned and considered talking about on the podcast, and hopefully we'll do at some point in the future. But like my knowledge is so it's so minuscule compared to what I know is out there. It's like a real blank spot for me, because when it came to for international comics, obviously that was for me it was manga for the most part. So I only really have a passing experience with these things. But yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff from what I've seen.
I'm the same. I'm aware of it, but I just wish that I had more of a grounding and more of a knowledge of it, and I guess more saturation where that stuff's concerned, because I would like to have read more of it, and I guess it's just because it hasn't been there right in front of me, and maybe you could say I've been a little lazy sometimes, but obviously, you know, I should really go out and pick it up and read more of it, because I'm very aware that French comics have that it's its own thing. They have their own kind of tradition and everything else in publishing comics and graphic novels. In France, it's not like it's own separate thing. They publish their own comics and graphic novels. And it'd be great to sort of read some French stuff when it does get translated. Yeah, definitely something to look into. Moving on from there, I am at the end of my list now. And my list finishes with me talking briefly about the recent Thanos comics that Donny Cates has worked on, because they are so very cool. So we're in the middle of an arc called Thanos Wins, where Thanos wins.
Spoilers.
Yeah, spoilers. Thanos wins. He's like the last thing left alive in the entire universe, and it's kind of poetic in a way. The way they do it, and I love some of the it's like basically it all comes down to a final standoff. Like Thanos of our time gets brought to the future by future Thanos, who has been alive for millennia, and he's killed pretty much everything in the universe apart from the Silver Surfer, the Incredible Hulk, and Ghost Rider. Now, Ghost Rider is not the Ghost Rider you know, because by this point, Ghost Rider is Frank Castle. So Frank Castle has become Ghost Rider. And he's not just Frank Castle Ghost Rider. He's Frank Castle Ghost Rider that has been imbued with the power cosmic, because one time he worked for Galactus as a herald. And he's now working for Thanos, and he's gone a bit crazy because he's been alive for millennia as well. And it's just brilliant the way they play it all out. The Silver Surfer is like he's got like this new look where it's like he's made of hematite, like black shiny Silver Surfer, and like metallic black Silver Surfer he's wielding Thor's hammer now. Like he made himself worthy so that he could use Thor's hammer to fight Thanos. Frank Castle's working for Thanos. Thanos just sits on a throne surrounded by the dead bodies of everything. He's got Galactus's skull, like somewhere in his like crazy monolithic palace of death or whatever. And I just think it's brilliant. I just love where it goes with stuff, and I love how original it is, and some of the original things it does with the characters, and some of the character designs as well. Like, it asks the question, what if Thanos won? And it answers it. Of course, as we all know, knowing Thanos, knowing what he does, and knowing who he worships and his one true love, we know that if Thanos wins, everything else dies. and he's the last thing left alive in the universe, and he's cool with that, you know. And it's got some great twists, and there's some great writing and execution. It's very original. There's a lot of cool art in there. It's fun. And if you want a primer in what Thanos is about and who Thanos is pre-Infinity Wars movie, I mean, if you're looking for some sort of primer, then this recent Thanos run, we're on number 17 now. That's the most recent one that's been published. Thanos issue 17. But yeah, this sort of like recent Thanos run, which is, I think, if you're looking for just the Thanos Wins arc, which kind of gives you, it's kind of like an exploration of his character, and it kind of gives you a primer on what he is and what he would do, and you know, like what this guy is about. Which, spoiler, Thanos is about death. But you it's kind of a great primer for that, and a great way to sort of a great snapshot into who Thanos is through seeing what would happen if Thanos won. And that is, I think it's running up to issue 18, and it starts at issue 13. So issues 13 to 18, and also includes Thanos Annual 2018, number 1. And I think there's going to be a collected edition available later on this year in June, if you're interested in picking it up. But if you want to read it before then you want issues 13 to 18, when 18 drops. Because we're not at the end of the run yet, but it's great. So yeah, check it out. And that's pretty much all I have to say on that, because it's just all kinds of electric awesome, and everyone needs to read it. And the list of names on this one, it's quite a big production again, but we've got writers. Donny Cates. Donny Cates takes the main writing credit for it as well. I think he's kind of like the sort of biggest pen in there. And you've got Katie Cook, Al Ewing, Kieran Gillen, Christopher Hastings, and then you've got art by Katie Crook, Fraser Irving, and Jeff Shaw. So yeah, it's definitely worth picking up. And I guess that brings us to a close and moves us on to the pull list. So these are comics that you can pick up upon the release of this podcast, and also things you will be able to pick up the following week. So, Leon, I don't think you've got anything for the pull list, have you?
No, my pull list is wandering into my local comic book shop or tiredly scrolling through Comixology.
Yeah.
On New Comic Book Day. That's how I get down. I'm not as organised as you guys.
Oh, it's not quite a military operation. These are just all things that I've seen that I'm looking forward to, and may or may not pick up depending on what they have and haven't got in the comic book store when I get there, and what isn't available on eBay when it's sold out in the comic book shop. But for this week, so upon the release of this podcast, which will be the 4th of April, so the 4th of the 4th, 2018, we have a book called Isola or Isola. I'm not quite sure how it should be pronounced. And that'll be Isola number 1, and that is published by Image Comics. Now, this looks quite interesting because it looks like it's kind of got a fantasy edge to it, and again, it's how I've described Extremity in the past as having a kind of Ghibli-ish thing going on for it. This has got that kind of thing as well. That kind of Laputa stylization about it. With the way the tech and the way the fantasy element plays together with that. And this is by Brendan Fletcher and Carl Kerschel, and you've got artist Masick and Carl Kerschel as well. So they basically come together to bring, well, what it says here on the official previews page. I'll just read this out. So, childhood friends Brendan Fletcher of Motor Crush and Eisner Award-winning storyteller Carl Kerschel, Gotham Academy, reunite on the comics page with a breathtaking fantasy adventure 2 decades in the making. The captain of the Royal Guard has fled the capital city with the Queen of Mar, suffering under the effects of an evil spell. Captain Rook's only hope of returning Queen Olwyn to her throne and saving the kingdom from impending war lies on an island half a world away, a place known in myth as Isola, Land of the Dead, featuring lush colourwork by Masick, Gotham Academy, and letters by Aditya Bidkar, Motor Crush. Recommended for fans of Studio Ghibli and the works of Hayao Miyazaki. So there you go. The Previews World page pretty much took the words out of my mouth as far as I was saying. It looks very Ghibli. But yeah, Isola. So that's one I'll be picking up and possibly talking about on the next cast. We've got Scales and Scoundrels number 8, another new book from Image called Analog, which the sort of long and the short of it for this one is that 5 years from now, the security of the internet has been completely destroyed and secrets aren't sent over the web anymore. They're carried on paper by dudes carrying briefcases. And I get the feeling it's a very dangerous profession to be in and people get beat up and shot a lot. So, yeah, this is about this profession. They call them ledger men. And this is a story about the ledger men. So yeah, that book's called Analog. So that's another interesting one to pick up, and that is Jerry Duggan and David O'Sullivan. And of course, we've got the next instalment of Marvel 2-in-1, Marvel 2-in-1 number 5, which is the continued adventures of the Thing and the Human Torch as they search for the 2 missing members of the Fantastic Four, which we have recently discovered are making a comeback because there was an announcement. I think Marvel put some stuff on Twitter, and it's kind of been sort of in various places on the comics net, various different places that talk about comics and things have spilled the beans that the Fantastic Four are on their way back, so keep an eye out for that one. Now with and I think this Marvel 2-in-1 stuff will be like the lead up to the new Fantastic Four books when they finally arrive. So the following week, which will be the 11th of April, we have two things on here that I've put on. I've got the second installment of Oblivion Song, so Oblivion Song number 2, which is the one that we talked about before, and that is the guy brought to you by the guy that wrote The Walking Dead. And we've also got the Spider King number 3, and that brings us to a close. So that has been Ace Comicals number 32. You can find us at www.acecomicals.com, which is the hub for everything. We have all our podcasts available there, and that's also got links to the various places that you can find the podcast and other things that we do outside of the cast as part of the cast. So you can find our Instagram page where we are Ace Comicals. You can find us on Facebook under Ace Comicals. You can find us on Twitter at Ace Comicals. You can find us on WordPress, which is acecomicals.wordpress.com. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Overcast, Pocket Cast, Stitcher, TuneIn, and Castro. You can find me on Twitter under @Batto. That's Battou. If you want to field a question, you can field it to the Ace Comicals Twitter account, either @reply or send us a DM, or you can come straight to me on Twitter and you can field a question to me @Batto, or you can send us an email to acecomicals@gmail.com. Leon, where can we find you?
You can find me at Leon Everett, and in just over a month's time of when this episode goes up, it'll be Free Comic Book Day. So looking forward to that, and we'll hopefully do some interesting things for that occasion. Yeah,
Free Comic Book Day. Definitely looking forward to that, and maybe for the next episode, I can get some sort of like previews together of what we can look forward to for Free Comic Book Day. Because a lot of places, I think a lot of publishers have already got sort of some kind of like semi-list up for what they're going to be releasing, and things like that. So I think we've already got kind of an idea of what we might be getting on Free Comic Book Day. So hopefully I'll have more information by then. I'll be able to. That'll be cool. It
was quite fun last year, so we got to top it this year. Yeah,
we've got to have something to watch this year, because last year we watched Suicide Squad, so I think we need something on that level. I haven't quite decided what yet, but there's been a few ringers at the cinema. that I think
We'll
might make
find
good fodder for that. Yeah, we'll find something. So yeah, that has been Ace Comicals episode 32. So thanks for listening, guys. Ace Comicals, over and out.